My beloved, God chosen, listen carefully. This is not another sermon. This is not something you just scroll past. This is a divine alarm clock, and it's going off inside your spirit. Everything around you has paused because heaven is addressing you. You've been marked for more. And whether you feel ready or not, God is reaching deep into the parts of you that have been quiet for far too long. It's time. You've kept your roar in a cage. You've downplayed your fire so others wouldn't feel small. You've swallowed your voice because rejection trained you to fear your own power. But God never designed you to be silent. He didn't call you to blend in. You were chosen to shake atmospheres and dismantle darkness. And right now, the Spirit of God is awakening the part of you've silenced, because this world can afford your silence any longer. Look at your life. The battles you face weren't random. The early childhood wounds, the betrayals, the moments where you felt invisible, those were strategic attacks on your identity. The enemy saw your potential long before you did. That's why he tried to shut you down before you ever discovered who you were. But despite it all, you're still here, breathing, listening, stirring. There's something in you that refuses to die, a flame that never fully went out. Even in your lowest seasons, it flickered. You could feel it late at night calling you higher. You could sense it in moments of silence when no one else could see your tears. That part of you, that's the part God is calling back to life. You don't need to force it. You don't need to earn it. The anointing on your life is not performance-based, it's identity-based. You are who God says you are, whether people believe it or not. And that truth will always overpower every lie spoken over your life. The Spirit of the Lord is hovering over you now, just like He hovered over the deep before creation began. He's not intimidated by your chaos. He's not avoiding your brokenness. He's speaking into it. In the ancient scrolls, we read these words in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 37, verse 4. Prophesy to these dry bones and say to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. That is what's happening here. The dry places in your soul, the gifts you buried, the dreams you abandoned, the strength you muted are being called back to life. The voice of the Lord is prophesying to the bones of your calling, and they are rattling, they are aligning, they are rising. Chosen one, you've been quiet too long. You've watched others step forward while you held yourself back. You've talked yourself out of assignments. You've dimmed your light to protect fragile egos. You've let fear win, but fear doesn't get the final word. Faith does. And the faith in you is waking up. This isn't about platform. This isn't about performance. This is about obedience. There is a roar rising inside you, not for your glory, but for the glory of the one who formed you. The same God who spoke galaxies into existence is the one speaking life back into you now. And His word never returns void. You were never meant to be safe. You were meant to be sent. Your silence has been comfortable, but it has cost too much. Every time you stayed quiet when you were meant to speak, someone else stayed bound. Every time you downplayed your calling, someone else stayed confused. But the chain-breaking version of you, the fire-walking, truth-speaking, demon-rushing version is rising now. This is not hype. This is not emotion. This is alignment. And the heavenlies are bearing witness that the time is now. Don't ignore this moment. Don't tell yourself you'll respond later. The pull you feel is the voice of God awakening destiny inside you. If this message has pierced something in your spirit, Don't let it pass like every other video. Type 444 in the comments as a prophetic act, a signal to your heaven that you receive the call, and a sign to yourself that you will not return to silence. And if this message confirms what's been stirring inside you like it, share it. Comment and subscribe. Stay connected to what God is speaking. Stay planted where the Spirit is moving. This is not just a message. This is your activation point. You've silenced the roar inside, not because you were weak, but because the world told you it was safer that way. Somewhere along the journey, you decided that being loud in spirit, bold in truth, and fully alive in your calling was too costly. So you hushed the fire, you dimmed the light, you tucked away the fiercest parts of yourself, the ones meant to lead, to rise, to confront, to heal. And maybe no one noticed, maybe they applauded the quieter, more agreeable version of you. But heaven did not celebrate your silence, because the roar in you came from God Himself. It was not pride, it was not rebellion, it was purpose. It was prophecy in motion. You weren't born to be silent. You were born with a holy disruption inside your bones. That weight you've carried since childhood. That sense that you could see what others ignored. That deep anger at injustice. That ache when you see pain. That fire that rises when truth is distorted. That was never something to hide. That was heaven crying out through your frame. That was God breathing through your humanity. But life has a way of muting us. When people misunderstand your passion, they call it too much. When you speak truth, and they call it judgment. When your boundaries are labeled selfish and your discernment called paranoia. Over time you start to agree with the voices sent to shrink you. And once you agree, you bury what God gave. Not because it stopped burning, but because carrying it alone became too heavy. Somewhere along the line, you decided it was easier to fit in than to stand out, safer to follow than to lead, more comfortable to hide than to speak. But deep in your bones, you knew. You always knew. You weren't meant for smallness. You weren't meant to be palatable. You weren't made to blend in with the crowd. You were made to stand apart. Even when it's lonely, God put a roar in you for a reason. It wasn't just for your own freedom, it was for others too. Your roar isn't just a sound, it's a signal. It activates dormant warriors. It wakes up slumbering gifts. It shakes chains of bound souls. And that's why the enemy worked overtime to silence you. If your roar ever returned, hell would lose territory. So he whispered lies that sounded like wisdom. He sent voices disguised as friends, mentors, leaders. Voices that told you to calm down, to be careful, to be kept, not always with bad intentions, sometimes even with love. But they didn't recognize what was inside you. They didn't see that your silence wasn't peace, it was torment. That your quietness wasn't surrender, it was suppression. But heaven saw it all. The Lord who formed you in secret knows the weight of what you buried. He knows the fire you've swallowed, and He's not angry with you. He's not disappointed, but He's calling it out again. You may have silenced the roar, but you didn't kill it. You can't kill what's divine. You can only delay it. And now the delay is over. Everything around you feels unsettled because what's inside you is rising again. That restlessness you feel, it's holy. That sense that nothing satisfies anymore, it's spiritual. You were made to shake systems, not to serve them. You were created to lead, not just to follow orders. And that roar you silence, it's coming back stronger than ever. There's a sound that's about to come out of you, and it's going to shift the atmosphere around your life. It's going to break cycles. It's going to wake up every part of your soul that's been asleep. And it won't be loud in volume, it will be loud in authority, because the roar God placed inside you isn't always a scream. Sometimes it's a whisper that carries thunder. Sometimes it's truth spoken in love. Sometimes it's choosing to rise when everyone expects you to stay broken. That's the roar. That's the power. And you're about to walk in it again, not because you feel strong, but because God is reactivating what was never meant to die. Your obedience will be the sound. Your courage will be the echo. And your life will be the proof. As the scripture declares in the book of Isaiah, chapter 58, verse 1, shout it aloud, do not hold back. Raise your voice like a trumpet. Declare to my people their rebellion, and to the descendants of Jacob their sins. You don't need the approval of people who never understood the assignment on your life. You don't need the applause of crowds who never knew the cost of your calling. You just need to yield, to say yes, to stop pretending you're not powerful, to stop hiding behind false humility. You are not arrogant for recognizing what God put in you. You are not prideful for walking in authority. You are not proud. God is great. Give us the grace to walk in. You're finally being honest about who He created you to be. And the roar you silenced, it's waking up. The world will hear it, but first you must. There is a reason darkness fears you even before you understood your own calling. Hell could already smell the oil on your life before you ever opened your mouth in authority. Demons flinched when you entered the room. And it wasn't because of your titles, your degrees, or your following. It was because of your alignment. You were born with a mark on your soul, not a mark of shame, but of fire, a spiritual signature that signals to the unseen realm, this one is dangerous. Not because you walk perfectly, but because you carry truth that exposes lies. Not because you shout louder than others, but because your very existence is resistance against generational darkness. You carry a light that terrifies what hides. That's why people have treated you like a threat before you even said a word. That's why you've been rejected without reason, misunderstood without cause, attacked without warning, not because of something wrong with you, but because of what's right with you. You disrupt patterns without trying. You reveal hidden things just by showing up. You shake structures just by standing in truth. There's a war going on, and you've been on the front lines longer than you realized. You weren't being sensitive when you felt the heaviness others ignored. You weren't imagining things when you sensed the spiritual warfare in a room others called fine. You weren't wrong for feeling exhausted after conversations where everyone else felt normal. You were discerning what others couldn't see, because the weight you carry isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. And the part of you that kept apologizing for being too much, it was never too much. It was exactly what God designed. But hear this, the reason the enemy tried to exhaust you was to keep you from recognizing how effective you already are, even in your tiredness. If you ever walked in full authority, if you ever truly stood up in your mantle, chains would break in every direction. That's why the resistance increased the moment you got closer to obedience, the moment you started stepping out in truth. The attacks got personal. That wasn't coincidence, that was confirmation. You were born to disturb darkness, but to do that, you have to stop shrinking for the sake of comfort. Stop diluting your discernment to protect fragile feelings. Stop silencing the spirit within you to maintain false peace. You weren't sent to make demons comfortable. You were sent to confront them. God didn't give you eyes to see so you could stay silent. He didn't give you a sharp sense of truth so you could hide it in politeness. You were raised up for confrontation, not carnal petty battles, but real spiritual warfare, not with fists, but with fire, not with rage, but with righteousness. That's why people don't understand you. You're not just a person, you're a threat. Your words carry weight, your prayers carry fire, and your presence stirs the invisible. When you walk into a place, you don't just enter, you shift it. And that's why the room gets tense. That's why you've been labeled intense. That's why people pull back or suddenly change when you show up. It's not your attitude, it's your atmosphere. Your spirit irritates what's been hiding in theirs. Scripture records in the Gospel of Luke chapter 10 verse 19, I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. No, this authority wasn't given to be stored away, it was given to be used. And the enemy's greatest fear is not just that you know who you are, it's that you'll act like it. That you'll stop tiptoeing and start trampling. That you'll stop questioning your authority and start executing it. You don't need more confirmation. You don't need another sign. This is it. You've been chosen to terrify darkness. And if your spirit knows this to be true, if something deep within you has always sensed you were meant to disturb systems, shift rooms, and expose what's hidden, then comment this now. I shift atmospheres, not just a phrase, but a truth. You don't carry emptiness, you carry impact. You don't just walk in places, you transform them. Commenting these words is more than participation. It's agreement with heaven, with truth, with your identity. Because when you shift atmospheres, you don't just change rooms, you change regions. You break patterns. You awaken sleeping destinies. You expose what was hiding. You dismantle what was ruling. You make it impossible for darkness to remain undisturbed. That's what shifting looks like. You are a walking revelation. Even when you don't feel like one, there is something about you that speaks before you ever say a word. The way you carry pain with purpose, how you survive storms without drowning, how you discern truth even in deception. The world may not know how to interpret you, but heaven calls you a message in motion. Every room you've entered, every season you've survived, every betrayal you've endured, it has added weight to your spirit. Not the kind that crushes, but the kind that commands. You don't just walk into environments, you reveal what's been hidden. You expose what was tolerated, and even in silence, you announce a standard. People couldn't explain why they were drawn to you or why they felt uncomfortable. That's not personal, it's spiritual. Your life reveals what others try to avoid. You carry clarity. And in a world addicted to confusion, clarity is confrontation. That's why some distance themselves, why others tried to label you, why you felt isolation, not because you were wrong, but because you were right too soon. They weren't ready for what you carried, and you weren't meant to water it down to keep peace. You tried to explain yourself, to justify your weight, to shrink your truth into something others could tolerate, but you were never called to dilute your revelation to match someone else's resistance. Your life is a message. God is still writing. Even when you feel messy, even when your emotions swing, you are still becoming and still obeying. And that alone makes you a threat to darkness. Because the enemy knows what others don't. You were never just a person, you were a prophecy. Your existence is an answer to prayers prayed long before your birth. The battles weren't just about your past, they were resistance against your future. Every scar tells a story hell hoped would stay silent, but stories speak even when we don't. Your walking, breathing, persevering life is a testimony unfolding, and even the dark chapters are sacred. The nights you cried, God was still writing. The mornings you rose numb, heaven still watched with purpose. The days you felt invisible, your name was known in eternity. Your presence is prophetic. Even in waiting, you walk between fire and promise. You carry both sorrow and hope. You live with unanswered questions and unshakable faith. That contradiction is not a flaw, it's a signal. God is doing something the world can't explain but can't ignore. You've always been ahead of your time. You saw through masks before others did. You sensed danger others ignored. That's not anxiety, that's prophetic discernment. But discernment comes with weight. The ache of seeing what others deny, the burden of truth in places that resist it. But again, chosen one, you weren't made to fit, you are made to reveal. And those who reveal are rarely celebrated in real time. They get rejected, questioned, doubted, but that doesn't make them wrong, it makes them dangerous. And you've been dangerous to darkness your whole life. Not because of what you say, but because of what you carry. Even in silence, you carry truth. Even in stillness, you shift things. Even in confusion, you release light. Even in brokenness, you reveal healing. The scriptures reveal in the writings of the prophet Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 2, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it. You are living proof that God still speaks through people. You are a page in the unfolding scroll of divine purpose. You may not have a microphone, a stage, or a title, but you have something far greater evidence. Every room you enter becomes a little less dark because you're in it. You didn't survive just to survive. You survived so others could see what survival with revelation looks like. You're not walking out of pain, you're walking into prophecy. Every step proves God's hand is still on you. So let the misunderstood moments stay misunderstood. Let the silence speak louder than applause. Your life is the message. Your endurance is the ink. And your scars, they are not shame. They are signatures, proof that revelation costs something and you're still standing. And when people finally see what God has always known about you, they won't just admire you, they'll recognize the God who sustained you. Because in the end, you were never trying to make yourself known. You were always pointing back to the author, and he is not finished writing. You were chosen not to be comfortable, but to be set apart from the moment God marked your life. He never intended for you to fit into what the world called normal. You were never meant to blend in, never meant to settle for ease, and certainly never meant to chase the approval of crowds. You were born with fire in your spirit and weight in your presence. And with that comes a life that rarely feels simple. You've wondered why your path has been so intense, why others coast through life, while your every step feels like resistance, why you're always the one who sees the issue no one wants to talk about, why you feel heavy in rooms others seem to float through. It's not because you're broken, is because you're called. Comfort was never your assignment. Impact is. God doesn't call His chosen ones to a life of ease. He calls them to alignment. And alignment will always cost more than comfort ever demands. It will cost your popularity. It will cost your silence. It will cost relationships, convenience, and sometimes even your reputation. But the weight of calling is worth every ounce of discomfort, because it breaks cycles, sets captives free, and shakes atmospheres. You were never called to settle in the wilderness. You were called to lead others out of it. This is why your life has been under such pressure. It's not because you're weak, it's because you carry too much to be casual. You've been entrusted with more than most, which means you've been processed deeper than most. And that process, it's proof. God is shaping you, stretching you, refining you, not to destroy you, but to deliver what's inside of you. You can't afford to crave comfort in a season of consecration. The oil on your life didn't come from convenience. It came from crushing, from the places where you bled in secret, from the choices you made in silence, from the times you obeyed even when it made no sense. Every step you took in faith, even when your legs were shaking, God saw it, and He's been building something in you the whole time. Chosen one, hear me clearly. The discomfort you feel isn't punishment, it's positioning. You are being positioned for what you were born to carry. Not everyone will understand it. Not everyone will support it. But that doesn't make it any less real. The calling on your life was never about visibility. It was about obedience. And obedience rarely feels glamorous. It often looks like turning down opportunities. It looks like leaving places you've outgrown. It looks like staying when your flesh wants to run, or speaking when your fear wants to stay silent. This is the walk of the chosen. Obedience over applause, purpose over popularity, truth over tradition. And in this walk, you're not walking alone. Heaven backs you, angels surround you, the Spirit leads you. And every time you feel like giving up, grace meets you right where you are. But grace doesn't always feel like ease. Sometimes it feels like pressure, because grace isn't just there to comfort you, it's there to prepare you. Scripture records in the book of Romans chapter 12 verse 2, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You're not meant to fit the mold. You're not called to conform. The way you think, pray, discern, and lead, it's different because it has to be. What's on your life demands separation. Not separation in arrogance, but in awareness. You don't chase what others chase because you see what others can't. You're not led by emotion. You're led by conviction. And while that walk may feel lonely, it is never without purpose. So if this message is stirring something in you, don't just let it pass through your feed. Like it, share it, subscribe, not because of me, but because you need to stay connected to the sound of truth in a noisy world. There is a remnant rising. You're part of it. Stay planted, stay aligned. And if this word has blessed you and you feel led to sow into what God is doing, there's a way to give. Every seed helps push this message further to reach the other chosen ones, still wandering, still hiding, still waiting to hear a sound that wakes them up. Give as you feel led, no pressure, just obedience. Because we're not building a brand, we're building altars. We're not chasing numbers, we're chasing the lost. We're not creating noise, we're releasing clarity. And if you've been searching for a place where your calling is seen, your fire is understood, and your process is not judged, You found it. Let the world misunderstand you. Let the comfortable mock your sacrifice. Let the noise rise. You just keep walking with fire. Because the oil on your life is rare, and rare things are always refined in the heat. The enemy fought your identity early, not because of who you were, but because of who you'd become. Before you could speak, before you had language for your purpose, the warfare began. It came in forms you didn't recognize at the time. Rejection, abandonment, confusion, silence, shame. The people who were supposed to affirm you didn't know how. The places that were meant to be safe became battlegrounds, and the words spoken over you, some were curses disguised as counsel. But even back then, heaven had already marked you. You weren't random. You were a mistake. You were always targeted because you were always chosen. And the enemy doesn't waste his ammunition on the average. He doesn't launch attacks against people with no purpose. He only fights those who carry something precious. And you, chosen one, carry something hell has tried desperately to suppress. This is why your identity has always been under pressure, why you've battled thoughts of unworthiness, why you've struggled to believe that your voice matters, why you've questioned whether God could really use someone like you, because from a young age, the enemy started planting seeds of doubt, hoping you'd never discover what was truly inside you. But what the enemy tried to bury, God is resurrecting. You see, the enemy didn't just try to discourage you, he tried to dismantle your sense of identity. Because if you never know who you are, you'll never step into what's yours. If you never recognize the authority you carry, you'll keep asking for permission to walk in rooms you were born to lead. But God is reversing the lies. He's tearing down false narratives and rewriting your foundation. You're not who they said you were. You're not your trauma. You're not your failure. You're not the mistake you made or the labels they gave. You are who heaven says you are. Called holy, set apart, redeemed. And even now, as you read this, the Spirit of God is pulling back the layers, exposing the wounds that masked your identity, shining light into the corners where doubt still whispers. Scripture reveals in the book of Isaiah chapter 62 verse 2, you will be called by a new name that the mouth of the Lord will bestow. And that's what God is doing in you. He's giving you your name back, your real one. It's the name attached to your assignment, the one that hell feared you'd remember. You are not too broken. End quote. You are not too late. End quote. You are not too much. End quote. You are exactly the vessel God chose to carry His glory into spaces religion has failed to reach. You were forged in fire so you could lead others through it. And every identity crisis you've endured has only refined your understanding of the truth. What tried to define you no longer holds power. Not the absent parent, not the abusive mentor, not the silence in the church, not the shame in your past, because the hand of God has rewritten your history with mercy, and He's calling the real you to rise. Not the version you created to survive, not the mask you wore to stay accepted, but the you that's bold, the you that carries fire, the you that is not afraid to disrupt atmospheres. This is why the resistance has been so strong. The enemy hoped the pressure would make you walk away. He hoped you'd believe the lie that you were disqualified, but you didn't quit. You're still standing. And the fact that you're still here means something powerful. You're not behind schedule. You're right on time. The warfare didn't erase your calling, it exposed it. And now your identity is not just theory, it's tested. You know who you are because of what you've been through. You've been through fire, and the only thing that burned were the chains. The only thing that broke were the lies. And now you're free to be the original you, the dangerous you, the you the world needs. If you're reading this and something inside you is resonating, if you know deep down the enemy tried to erase your name before you ever learned to speak, then let heaven and hell both see your agreement. Comment the number 888 below. Not because it's a number, but because it's a declaration. I reclaim who I am. 888 represents new beginnings, a divine reset, a return to your original design. When you type it, you're not just engaging, you're aligning. You're saying, I will no longer live under labels that God never wrote. And from this moment forward, walk like you know who you are. Speak like the chosen one you've always been. Stand like the storm. Couldn't steal your name because it didn't, it refined it. There's a roar rising again. You felt it building quietly beneath the surface, like a tremor deep in the earth of your spirit. It doesn't make sense to your mind, but your soul knows what it is. The part of you that has been silent for years is waking up. The part you shut down to survive, the part you buried under fear, recaption and disappointment. The part that used to dream wildly, pray boldly, believe fiercely, it's not gone. It's been waiting. There's something sacred about the moment when the buried parts of you start to breathe again, when the voice you silenced suddenly starts whispering truth again. Not the voice of shame, not the voice of guilt, but the voice of your spirit, the one made in the image of God, filled with fire and purpose. You're not losing your mind. You're regaining your roar, because even silence for the chosen ones is not passive. It's loaded with tension. You never stopped being who you were. You just pressed pause on expressing it. Not because you lack truth, but because life taught you that being fully alive was too risky. You were too much, too loud, too intensive, too sensitive, so you shrunk. But that version of you, it was never real. It was a survival shell. And God never designed you to live in survival. He designed you for dominion. That stir you feel inside, that tension between where you are and what you know is in you. That's your roar trying to come back. That's the original you, the one God spoke into existence, rising from the ashes of delay, fear, and disappointment. Not to be loud for loudness' sake, but to walk again in spiritual volume, a life that speaks even in stillness. You may have lost your voice for a season, but it's not gone, it's just been maturing. Learning when to roar and when to rest. Learning the difference between being loud and being clear. Because what's rising in you now isn't just noise, it's revelation. And when revelation starts to rise, everything around you has to adjust. That's why things have been feeling off. Why you've been restless. Why comfort no longer feels like peace. Because your current environment was never designed to contain your next dimension. You've outgrown it. Not in arrogance, but in assignment. What used to be enough now feels too small. What used to satisfy now leaves you hungry. That's not dissatisfaction, it's spiritual growth. The roar inside you is not coming back the same way it left. It's coming back with focus, with refinement, with weight. You don't just want to speak anymore, you want to build. You don't want noise, you want impact. You don't want attention, you want authority. And authority doesn't come from platforms, it comes from process, from the crushing, from the tears no one saw, from the prayers you prayed when you didn't have words, just groans. That roar was forged in private. long before it will be released in public. The world has no idea what's about to rise out of you, because when a chosen one finds their voice again, it doesn't just liberate them, it liberates everyone connected to them. Your freedom is contagious. Your healing becomes a roadmap for others. Your roar isn't just for you. It's a sound of war that signals breakthrough for those still in chains. You won't need to explain yourself this time. You won't need to beg for people to understand. The roar in you will speak for itself. It will break atmospheres. It will shut down confusion. It will awaken what's been sleeping. And no, not everyone will like it. Not everyone will applaud it, but they won't be able to ignore it, because when a chosen one roars, hell backs up. Shame loses its grip. Fear has to leave the room. The scriptures speak boldly in the book of Joel chapter 3 verse 16. The Lord also shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake. Lile, the roar that's rising in you now is not ego, it's legacy. You've been silent long enough. You've walked on eggshells long enough. You've tolerated confusion long enough. This is the return of your true voice, the one the enemy tried to bury, the one religion tried to silence.